I'm the broken lens that revealed the structure of DNA. I was born in the fires of German craftsmanship, somewhere in the workshops of Jena in 1948. My creators molded me from the finest optical glass, grinding my surface to mathematical perfection. I was destined to be more than mere glass. I was to be an eye into the invisible world. The craftsman's hands were steady as he polished my curves, his breath fogging my surface momentarily before he wiped me clean. I could feel his pride in each careful stroke. I was part of something greater, a magnificent microscope that would peer into realms no human eye could reach alone. When they first mounted me into the brass housing, I felt the weight of purpose settle upon my crystalline form. The laboratory in London's King's College became my new home, a place where the air hummed with electric potential and the scent of chemicals danced in delicate spirals. I watched as white-coated figures moved through the space like ghosts of discovery, their eyes bright with questions that demanded answers. Little did I know that within these walls, I would witness one of humanity's greatest revelations, that I, despite an imperfection that would come to mark my surface, would become the window through which the secret architecture of life itself would first be glimpsed. The laboratory buzzed with an energy I could feel through the metal that held me. Men in suits spoke in hushed, serious tones about X-rays and crystals, about patterns and structures hidden in the smallest building blocks of existence. I was ready to serve, my surface prepared to focus light and reveal truth. It happened on a grey Tuesday morning in November 1951. Dr. Wilkins was adjusting my position when his elbow caught a glass beaker. I watched in slow motion as it tumbled. Toward me, its contents, a solution of potassium permanganate, arcing through the air like purple rain. The impact was swift and sharp. A hairline crack appeared across my surface, running from my center to my edge, like a lightning bolt frozen in glass. I felt my perfection shatter, my purpose seemingly compromised. The laboratory fell silent as they examined the damage. "It's ruined," someone whispered. "We'll need to order a replacement." But Dr. Franklin, who had just joined the team, stepped forward. Her eyes, intelligent, determined, studied my fracture with scientific curiosity rather than dismay. "The crack is minor," she said, her voice steady. "We might still use it for some applications." I felt a flutter of hope. Through my damaged surface, I could still gather and focus light, though now with a peculiar quality, the crack creating a subtle interference pattern that others might see as a flaw. But sometimes I would learn imperfections can reveal truths that perfection obscures. Dr. Franklin's colleagues were skeptical, but she saw something they didn't. As she adjusted the microscope settings with mathematical precision, I felt her understanding of light and matter flow through our connection. She wasn't just using me, she was trusting me, crack and all. That night, as the laboratory settled into darkness, I reflected on my new reality. I was no longer the perfect lens I'd been designed to be, but perhaps I could be something else, something unexpected. Dr. Rosalind Franklin became my constant companion. Every morning at precisely 8:30, she would enter the laboratory, her footsteps echoing against the polished floors. She moved with purpose, her hands steady as she prepared samples and adjusted my focus. She spoke to me, though she didn't know it, muttering calculations under her breath, describing what she hoped to see. "The crystal structure should reveal itself," she would say, her eyes intense with concentration. "X-ray crystallography will show us the truth." I learned to work with her rhythm, to compensate for my crack in ways that enhanced rather than hindered our observations. The hairline fracture actually created unique interference patterns in the X-ray diffraction images we captured together. What others saw as damage, Dr. Franklin recognized as potential. We spent long hours together in the darkened laboratory, watching as X-rays passed through DNA crystals and created patterns on photographic plates. Each exposure was a question posed to the universe. Each developed photograph, a whispered answer about the fundamental structure of life. I watched her face during these sessions, the slight furrow of concentration between her eyebrows, the way she held her breath as she made fine adjustments to my focus. She treated every experiment with reverence, understanding that we were touching something profound. Through my cracked surface, I began to see not just the physical properties of matter, but the dedication of a woman who refused to accept limitations. Her colleagues sometimes dismissed her work, but I felt the brilliance in her approach, the methodical precision that would soon yield extraordinary results. Late one evening, as snow began to fall outside the laboratory windows, she paused in her work and looked directly through me. For a moment, it felt as though she could see my consciousness, my desire to serve despite my imperfection. May the 6th, 1952. The date is etched in my memory like the crack across my surface. Dr. Franklin had been working for weeks to create the perfect B-form DNA crystal, hydrating it to just the right degree. The laboratory was unusually quiet that afternoon. Most of her colleagues had gone to a conference. She positioned the crystal with infinite care, adjusting my focus with practiced hands. The X-ray beam was aligned perfectly, and I felt the energy coursing through the apparatus. For a moment, everything was absolutely still. "Now," she whispered, and pressed the exposure button. 100 hours of X-ray exposure began. Through my fractured lens, I watched the invisible dance of atoms scatter radiation in precise patterns. My crack, which had seemed like a flaw, created a subtle enhancement in the diffraction pattern, a reinforcement of certain angles that made the helical structure even more apparent. When Dr. Franklin developed the photograph, I saw her face transform. The image, which would later be known as Photograph 51, showed what no human had ever seen before, the unmistakable double helix structure of DNA, captured in crystalline clarity. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the photograph up to the light. The pattern was beautiful, a cross of dark spots that spoke of helical symmetry, of base pairs stacked like steps in a spiral staircase. Through my imperfect surface, we had glimpsed perfection itself. "My God," she breathed, "it's a double helix." I felt a surge of pride that transcended my nature as mere glass and metal. Together, we had revealed the architecture of life itself. My crack hadn't ruined the image. It had helped create it, adding subtle enhancements that made the structure even clearer. That night, Dr. Franklin remained in the laboratory until dawn, taking measurements and making calculations. I watched her work, understanding that we had just changed the world forever. Chapter 5. The shadow what followed was bittersweet. Dr. Franklin's photograph became one of the most important images in scientific history, but the recognition she deserved seemed to slip through her fingers like light through crystal. I watched as other scientists built upon our work, Watson and Crick, who used Dr. Franklin's data to construct their famous model of DNA. While her photograph was credited, her role in the discovery was often minimized, her contributions overshadowed by the men who claimed the Nobel Prize. Dr. Franklin continued her work with characteristic grace and determination. She never spoke bitterly about the recognition that eluded her, but I felt her frustration in the tension of her hands as she adjusted my focus, in the slight pause before she spoke, when colleagues discussed Watson and Crick's discovery. She moved on to study the structure of viruses, and I remained her faithful tool, my crack now a familiar part of our collaboration. We made other discoveries together, unraveling the structure of tobacco mosaic virus, contributing to our understanding of polio, but her health was failing. Years of working with X-rays had taken their toll, and I watched with growing concern as she grew paler, more tired. Yet she never stopped pushing forward, never stopped seeking answers. In 1956, she published her work on the structure of RNA. Through my damaged lens, we had contributed to understanding another fundamental molecule of life. I realized that our greatest discovery, photograph 51, was just the beginning of a legacy that would ripple through science for generations. On those quiet evenings when we worked alone in the laboratory, I wished I could tell her how grateful I was to have been part of her journey, imperfect as I was. Chapter 6, The Legacy Doctor. Rosalind Franklin passed away on April 16, 1958, at the age of 37. I remained in the laboratory, now silent, processing the magnitude of what we had accomplished together. The crack across my surface had become a map of our shared purpose. Proof that even broken things could contribute to something beautiful. Years passed. New hands adjusted my focus. New eyes peered through my lens, but none with quite the same understanding that Dr. Franklin had possessed. I became a piece of scientific history, eventually donated to the Science Museum in London, where visitors could see me and learn about the discovery of DNA's structure. As I sit in my display case now, I reflect on what I witnessed. Through my cracked surface, I saw more than just the architecture of life. I saw the dedication of a remarkable woman who refused to let obstacles define her limitations. My imperfection didn't prevent discovery. It became part of the very tool that revealed one of nature's most elegant secrets. Photograph 51 hangs in museums around the world now, a testament to the power of persistence and precision. When people look at that image, they're looking through my eyes, cracked, imperfect eyes that somehow saw more clearly than many perfect ones ever could. I learned that flaws don't disqualify us from greatness. They can become the very features that make our contributions unique. Dr. Franklin treated my crack not as a limitation, but as a characteristic, working with my imperfection rather than against it. Today's scientists stand on the foundation we helped lay: DNA sequencing, genetic medicine, biotechnology. All of it traces back to that moment when light bent through my fractured surface and revealed the double helix to the world. Sometimes the most profound discoveries come not from perfection, but from the courage to see beyond imperfection to the truth that lies waiting beneath. In my crack, there was revelation. In Dr. Franklin's quiet determination, there was revolution. And in our partnership, broken glass and brilliant mind, there was proof that the universe reveals its deepest secrets to those willing to look closely, despite the flaws that might obscure their vision. The secret of life was hiding in the structure of a molecule, waiting for the right eyes to see it. I was honored to be the lens through which that secret first came into focus. Crack and all,